Does anyone have any questions for our speakers? Andy?
Of course, it has to be the wrong side.
For Jamie Humby, sorry. And I was very interested in the Samson's ribs, because apparently when they were cutting Queen's Drive, they found a number of Bronze Age weaponry, even charcoal. Did you find any remains that went back to that sort of period?
No, we've not found anything that goes back to that period, but there is, yes. They're clearly those. When they've been digging in the Queen's Drive, there's a whole series. And one thing I didn't mention is up on Dunsappy, there's a hoard of Bronze Age flat axes as well. So there's a lot of metalwork deposition going on throughout the Bronze Age in the park.
But nothing, no dates turned up. Oh yes, you mentioned a large chunk of charcoal from Salisbury Crags. Has it been dated?
No, that's been from just this year's fieldwork, so we've not had time to get that dated yet.
Thank you very much.
But that will be a target for dating, yeah.
Thanks.
Back and forward. Thank you. I'm not built for exercise.
Hello, so Jamie. The sides of the forts, is that anything to do with defending a route into where the main castle of Edinburgh is?
Oh, sorry.
Is that a possibility?
Well, I mean, the castle's occupied at the same time, so there must be a relationship between the two. But
so
I think
sort of sweeping rounds from Duddingston.
I think that would be quite hard to say for certain, to be honest. Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Well, I think there must be some sort of relationship between the occupants of the sites in Holyrood Park and on Castle Rock. But yeah, what that is exactly, we're not sure.
That's one better.
Thanks. Can I ask about the Battle of Pinkie? As I understand it, the battle seemed to start near Pinkie Cleuch and probably moved southeast. I mean, maybe I'm not clear about this, but it seemed to move quite a bit. Is that part of the reason why the archaeology is maybe not as dense and multiple as we might have expected, because we're not sure exactly where the main part of the battle took place?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you obviously had the Scots on the opposite side of the Esk and the English at Preston Pans, and they were both sort of headed for the hill at Inveresk. Scots got there first, and then there's an indication that they then both sort of turned southward toward Fawside to try and get the high ground there. And so that's quite a big area, Inveresk Fields, that we just, somewhere in there, they clashed. There's lots of different theories. I think the most recent review of Historic Environment Scotland's inventory, there's about 5 different suggestions of where the actual armies met and clashed. So yeah, it's a massive area, and as it showed, there's been a lot of earth moving in Inveresk Fields. So, like, trying to find stuff that is related to the battle and that is where it originally was is nigh on impossible, I think, unless we find sort of the burials or a real dense set of artifacts that would point to it.
Thank you.
That one first, then that one.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers there. Especially, I've at last found out where on earth that third fort is on Arthur's Seat. Thank you. My question actually, though, is for Tremontium. Bizarrely, at the same time, we've actually been publishing this guide for detecting in archaeology. It's just come out on BAJR. No terrible plug there. However, it's all about, as you say, the data. Are you actually going to be publishing this data? Is it published already? Can we hear more?
It's It's not published at the moment. I mean, a lot of this is still ongoing. We're still finishing the process of cataloguing all 4,500 bits of tractor and everything else. It's all ending up as data. We certainly, it will get published. Probably it's, at the moment, its ultimate destination for publication is we're also trying to integrate it with the old Newstead and Environs project material and try and bring the whole lot together, because they're both approaching landscapes in quite complementary ways, but I'd also aim to start making it available as open data without waiting for full-scale classic final publication. And yeah, when I'm complaining about I would love to see other people's data on buttons per hectare and measurements like that, that kind of only works if you're also going to make your own stuff available. So over the next couple of years, we'll be starting to get some sort of open access data archiving going on for it.
Oh,
Sorry, see your trip.
I've still got to go there.
So I have another question actually for John, is it? Or Stuart? Sorry.
I'm John, this is Stuart.
Okay, both of you. Fantastic. So I'm interested in how archaeology is portrayed in media and pop culture. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the show Detectorists that came out in 2014 by the BBC. And I'm just curious if you guys have noticed the shift in attitudes towards metal detectorists following that show and its huge rise in popularity. And if you think there's any lessons that we could take away as archaeologists for promoting, you know, the messages we want to send out.
Yeah, I think that's a very useful question. You're absolutely right. And I think the shift has not just been in the public perception of detectorists, but it's also the detectorist buy-in into archaeology. Now, it's very unnatural to make detectorists walk in a straight line. Stuart has been working with this. He's been flogging them for the last 2 years. And we now have a cohort of detectorists who have the plug in the back of their head. You set them off and they go. And the one thing that we've seen is detectorists now joyfully joining archaeological projects that are, if you like, constrained and defined by the archaeological questions that are being asked, but enjoying the process of seeing how their finds lead to a better understanding of an area. So I think it cuts both ways, and you're right. I think the programme was a tremendous success in breaking down some of the barriers between the two groups. I also think that detectorists themselves value the feedback that they get from archaeologists. The one thing that I would say, if there's anybody here from Treasure Trove, anything that speeds up the process of getting things through Treasure Trove would be great, because a lot of detectorists are elderly and some of them are dying before this is not a joke. This is a cultural disaster where some of them are dying before they get their finds through Treasure Trove. So I don't know how we do it, but we need to do something about speeding that process up.
Thank you very much.
The other thing I'd maybe add to that is not just look at it from the point of view of what detectorists can do within archaeology, but certainly I've found the way I'm thinking of landscape archaeology and where knowledge about that resides has changed enormously by working with detectorists and realising just how much valuable information is in a less formal community rather than being captured by the archaeological institutions, where they happily believe that we know it all, and there's a lot of that information out there. We need to find better ways of getting into that.
Can you pass that along, please? When the music goes on rapid.
Thank you very much for all your talks. I've just got a quick question for Stuart. You were talking a lot there about the patterns and distributions that you were seeing in terms of post-Roman artefacts, and that's what I was going to ask you about, is whether or not you were seeing the impact of night soiling on the landscape, because what you were saying there about the distribution of finds telling us stories about the landscape in that post-Roman period, particularly the 17th into the 18th century, is really interesting. However, if the material might have been brought in with night soiling, with night soil, it's not necessarily going to be telling you the picture of the immediate landscape use. And I just wondered what the impact was and whether you have any evidence of night soiling in the area.
I mean, landscape archaeology and tracking artifacts in landscape is always trying to take sort of an end product and unpick how it got there. And undoubtedly things like night soiling are part of the story, and one of the reasons why proximity to occupied settlements is going to be changing that pattern. In terms of the Newstead stuff, I showed you the clay pipe fragments that are coming from the field walking there, and certainly for late 18th through to early 20th century, you can see very strong patterning where you've got lots of pottery associated with it, which I suspect is probably possibly giving more direct patterning, not just of night soiling, but other middening deposition. And that's suggesting a pattern that's much closer to the modern village of Newstead. And I think it's also where, you have to accept that there's sort of general scattering that's reflecting that sort of mechanisms that get stuff out into the fields, and to some extent looking for things that cut across that, where you've got other patterning that stands out as distinct from that background. But it is going to be quite subtle. And again, if you're looking at it in comparative stuff with other fields, feels like we're populating, particularly south of Scotland, with an ever-expanding grid of 20-metre squares. But where you look at places like Old Melrose, you don't seem to have that sort of patterning, and that may well reflect the fact that there is less night soiling because there are fewer settlements to produce that night soil. So it's not that some of the patterning might or might not be night soiling, but that's part of the complex set of behaviours that we can use this as a way of starting to think about and trying to take on the challenge of disentangling them. So that doesn't quite answer the question, because you're quite right. It is one of the explanations for material.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We've got time for one more question.
Thanks. This is about Tremontium as well. My apologies. It's just that if you were looking for comparanda, I wonder if you have considered Caister Roman Town project in Norfolk, a place which obviously has a great history of metal detecting and working with metal detectorists. This is a ongoing project, 5 years, nearly 10 years going now, run by Will Bowden from the University of Nottingham, and it might well provide you with some quite interesting comparanda data. And I was just thinking about the night soiling. Its proximity to Norwich means that there's almost certainly an awful lot of that going on there as well.
Yeah, there are one or two places, and that's certainly one that I'm aware of, that I've looked at publications. I haven't been in direct contact to see whether it would be possible to work with some of underlying data, but we're certainly not the only people interested in going in these directions. And I think there's quite an interesting discussion about trying to get in touch and develop comparable data sets, because it's not something that really works in isolation. It's something that's going to require a number of people to be open about their data and try and explore common interests. I think there are quite exciting possibilities there. As I said, it is one I'm aware of, and it's on my long list of things that I ought to do, is to chase that one up.